of friends of SMEs, because as you know, SMEs are quite important not only in Europe, I think it's all over the world the same. I myself, coming out of an SME, from my profession, I'm a blacksmith, you know, forging steel, red steel to strong black material. But in the meantime, I know with more than 20 years in European Parliament, how important it is to put this bubble of politics together with the bubble of SMEs and the economic decision making. And therefore, I'm very happy that with Horst Heitz and friends of SMEs, we can have a debate on how we can join these two bubbles between politics and, as I always say, the real world. But anyway, also the real world is responsible to get good decisions from the political side. At least in Europe, we have 25 million SMEs. And you know, SMEs, of course, have mainly family business, from self-employed to family business. And the most important step is always from self-employed to create an SME, because if you get your first people who help you in the business, you have to go through a lot of administration and bureaucratic burden, and you take a lot of risk. So growing companies is for some of the SMEs not the target, because they don't want to take the burden, the bureaucratic burden, which keeps them under responsibility. But we know that SMEs are doing 50% of the GDP of European Union. So it's a real important area. And at least they are employing 2/3 of the employees. So we know that SMEs have also a good opportunity to create a good base for the economic development. And one of the main debates in Brussels, of course, is that SMEs pay 80% of the tax. And therefore, the tax debate is always a very nice one. We have it since a long, long time. And of course, the principle should be to reduce the taxation on SMEs. And that would be, I think, one of the targets which we would need now in the crisis, because people have to suffer and have to take care that they can still go on with their business. So what can politics do? We have to build infrastructure. Infrastructure mainly is a business for big business. We need big business to help us to build up the infrastructure. If it's 5G, if it's fiber, if it's new streets, if it's rail. So we have a lot of opportunity where big companies are necessary, where European players are necessary to give the right framework to have return on investment. And I think that's the main message what I want to send today. Every activity which we create in business, of course, we look on return on investment, but also in politics, it would be very important to have return on investment, that we see that the billions which we put now into our society is also there for the next generation, and that it's not lost money. So one of the principles where we should take care is more public procurement. Public procurement also in a size that is possible for SMEs to take part on the public procurement. Public-private partnerships would be one of the big things where we could work very good together. And at least the value chain between self-employed SMEs and big international companies are substantial. So the value chain in education, in innovation, in all this functional learning is quite important. And so we always ask the big companies, help us to educate the SMEs, help us to give them support. You get sometimes very good options in good pricing and flexibility and innovation. So I think it's quite a positive way to act. But for my introduction, I think it's now time to give the word to Monika Hohlmeier. Monika Hohlmeier is sitting on the big chair of the budget committee. We had a lot of work together, and I know that she is very effective. And Monika, I'm so happy that you are now in the driving seat, and maybe you can tell us a little bit what are the next steps for your activities.
Sorry, oh, Ms. Hohlmeier, your mic is off. But before, could I ask that we take a group picture before we continue? Just that everybody please turns on the camera. Mr. Kovarik, you please too. So, and yeah, look in the camera, give us your Hollywood smile, and 1, 2, 3. Very good, very good. Good to go. Ms. Hohlmeier, your mic is on, so please, yeah.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
So, hello, Paul. I say good morning to everybody. We are in a very interesting time as the COVID-19 pandemic is the most severe economic challenge for Europe and the European world since the World War II. We thought that the crisis of 2008 and 2009 would have been a big one. The one of COVID-19 pandemic is much bigger. Perhaps to give some figures, in the current estimates, the European Central Bank assumes that the currency union economy will plunge by 8.7% this year, before recovering by 5.2% into 2021 and 3.3% in 2022. The Italian major bank UniCredit even expects a slump of 13% this year, as Italy has a lot of tourism infrastructure, and that for Italy, tourism is a very important sector. And this sector was hit really very severely in the COVID-19 crisis, as Italy was hit severely by this crisis. To visualize the consequences, for example, German exports plummeted in April because of the Corona crisis. The value of exports fell by 31% to euro 75.7 billion from March to April. This was the largest drop in a month compared to some months in the previous year since the start of foreign trade statistic in 1950. The EU member states and local governments are at the forefront of addressing this crisis locally and are doing tremendous work doing so, but the challenge is even very big. So let me tell you some instrument. So you know that we are in a debate on FFF and Recovery and Resilience Fund. At the beginning, to address one big concern that I have, and Paul, you know that this concern was one concern of you either during a lot of years. The concern is that perhaps the member states will agree on certain instruments for recovering, on certain instruments of resilience and certain instruments of investment. That's very good. But at the end, they will, as I see it at the moment in the developments, they will forget innovation, they will forget the research area. And this is something that the Parliament will really address. And I hope that we have your support explicitly in the area of digitalization, that at minimum digitalization receives a big amount of money, and not only the recovery, because we need to go into the future, as Paul, you told already. We need 5G, we need a better position in digitalization, because there Europe is really behind, and we have China and the United States as the big two player, and Europe must become a better player, let's say like this. We have some instruments that are quite fine. There is the SURE instrument, the European Instrument for Temporary Support to Mitigate Unemployment Risk in an emergency. That's a back-to-back loans to member states with no pre-allocated amounts. Then the loans must be used by member states to finance short-time work schemes for employees or similar measures, or for the self-employed, up to 100 billion can be borrowed on financial markets. Second issue is the European Investment Bank, the Guarantee Fund, creation of 25 billion Guarantee Fund to enable EIB Group to scale up its support for companies in all member states by an additional 200 billion. There I see that some member states have doubts to this new instrument of Guarantee Fund, because they want to do everything in the, in the member states, but we have several member states that are not so experienced in this area, that it would be very helpful to have a guarantee fund. Then the EIB Group also approved a multi-beneficiary intermediate loan, this MBIL called, of 5 billion covering all EU member states, as part of its emergency response package, which aims to rapidly mobilize financing for SMEs and mid-caps in the coming weeks, up to 40 billion. Then we have the European Investment Fund. The European Commission has unlocked 1 billion from the European Fund for Strategic Investments, EFSI, that will serve as a guarantee to the European Investment Fund, EIF. This will allow the EIF to issue special guarantees to incentivize banks and other lenders to provide liquidity to at least 100,000 European SMEs and small mid-cap companies hit by the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic, for an estimated available financing of around about 8 billion. These were most of the instruments. We will discuss the whole MFF, and to come back to the research funding, the Commission has foreseen at the end in the 2 instruments of MFF and the instrument of recovery and resilience for 94 billion. To give some examples on the research funding of the last time that were very necessary, the 80 million of some financial support, for example, for vaccines, or now 164 million monitoring and other aspects of coronavirus for the treatment, for the testing, new medicaments, and so on. This is all corona related, but we need a research in all areas, not only in digitalization and not only in the health area, in corona area. We need research funding in a broader area. So, and I think that big companies have a huge role to play, because SMEs are very often suppliers, partners, and clients. So if the infrastructure of SMEs is suffering and we will face a lot of insolvencies, then it will hit the big players either. So big players have to play a big role. And I hope that you, Paul Rübig, and your initiative and our initiative will help to support that mid-sized companies or small companies can survive and can get the drive to the future. I'm stemming from Upper Franconia in Bavaria, and this is my constituency is really representing a strong SME landscape, and a lot of family-owned companies. So I hope that we together are successful.
Yes, thank you very much, Monica, and also for the immense work which you are doing in the budget committee and with all your activities. we are convinced that at least we will get a good solution also for the MFF, because these priorities will be crucial for the further economic development, and economic development at least is the base for social development. Because without economic development, we couldn't do our activities in the social field as we did it up till now. So I come immediately now to Yvonne Boloff. She is Global Director, Corporate Public Policy from Metro AG. Metro is a very important partner for SMEs because first of all, they are selling to Metro, but I think it's more important that they are good consumers of the services of Metro. And so I think Metro is in the middle of the value chain. And so we are very proud to have you. So please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Yeah, you're totally right. We have SMEs on the two sides, the producer side and the side of our customers, but I would like to talk today about our customers side. So Metro AG is an international wholesaler, and our customers are mainly restaurants, cafes, and caterers. I will say a couple of times in my little presentation, HoReCa, hotels, restaurants, catering, that's the abbreviation. But restaurants and cafes are our customers. That means our customers are among those who have been hit by the COVID-19 crisis in the most devastating way. And I guess you all know that restaurants, cafes have been among those who needed to close down, or which have been hit actually already before the lockdown, and who were among those who were able to open only after several months again. So when we are talking here mainly about very small restaurants, I mean family businesses with less than 10 employees, which usually also do not have an extensive or very solid financial basis they can rely upon for months during this crisis now. So their survival is really at risk, and I totally agree with Mrs. Hohlmeier. Their survival is at risk. That also has a strong impact on us in the short term, of course, but also in the long term. So Metro decided to act, but we actually did not just now decided to support our customers. Everything what I will tell you in a couple of seconds is building up an approach we have started or launched a couple of years ago already. We call it Wholesale 360, meaning we're no longer selling only tomatoes or flour or whatever to our customers. We try to have solutions on every level, including digital tools, including consultation for example, their menus and so on. So your success is our business is actually our slogan, and I think it explains a lot of what happened already before the crisis. But now it was not about customers' success, it is about customers' survival. And for us, that was the time to act, to get active and to walk actually the talk. And I think just to share two reflections, I think talking also to other business representatives, that the COVID-19 crisis for so many businesses has been a time to really deliver on the purpose when it comes to their customer success or their stakeholders, and to deliver very quickly, because in that time acting very quickly was or is still extremely decisive for everything what you do. So, and to show that you fully understand your customers. And on the other side, this crisis for me also has shown something I never felt in such a strong way, how strong politics and our customers are linked together, because every decision here with the lockdown, with the from the lockdown to the revival right now, yeah, somehow shows the very, very strong connections. But maybe we can discuss that later on. But most importantly, policy ambition, as this is a part of the title, is extremely important and can really make a difference. And it needs to make a difference even after first programs of support have been launched already. Policymakers need to be extremely woke. They need to be awake for everything what happens, because I think we are all clear that this is just the beginning of the crisis, and we will need to see or understand only at a much later stage how much the crisis has actually affected all of us. So, but talking about what Metro was doing in this special time, I think we delivered on four dimensions. The first one, the financial situation. Second, innovation and digital tools. The third one, it was a lot about information or becoming a hub of information. And the fourth level is creating public awareness. And to start with the first, I think it's all clear, liquidity was that what actually small players needed most during this time, or restaurants needed most during that time of the lockdown. So of course, Paul, at the beginning of our conference, you talked a little bit about the infrastructure big players can maybe offer, and Metro was among those who have increased the limits, provided longer payment terms and so on in order to support the liquidity situation of the customers. In a couple of countries, we have created funds on a national level For example, in Austria, our fund for restaurateurs is called One for All, providing money on different levels, special discounts for gloves and all these things you need right now. And we have also started or kicked off a digital tool called LiquiKit, which helps you analyzing the financial flow, the cash flow, and that is actually also part of the preparation for whenever you want to apply for a loan. And this brings me to now the next dimension of support, innovation, and digital tools. I think there was a lockdown, but when you wanted to be somehow active as a restaurateur, there was only one opportunity, and this is takeaway and delivery, because that was more or less allowed through all the Europe, not in all EU countries, members, but in most of them. But doing suddenly takeaway and delivery, it's a total different business. It's not the same, and you have no guest in your room. It's a total different business. So what we did was supporting, consulting the customers, how they can get there, what they need to do right now when they would like to start these activities. So consultation, but also providing all the necessary digital tools in terms of having a website where customers can order now and so on. And I said earlier, time really mattered here. You cannot wait 5 weeks until you start such a thing. Probably that's already a very difficult time. So you need to start very quickly. And based on that, we were reaching out to cooperation partners like Sixt, the car rental company, for example, who was providing cars for the restaurateurs to deliver the food. We were working with startups, providing contactless payment solutions and all these things. And we are still working on these, on the whole topic of getting into the delivery business, because also in a post-COVID-19 crisis, this will be a major tool for restaurateurs to stay alive, because we all know there could be a second wave, there could be a local lockdown again, and so on. So every restaurateur needs to prepare for the future, and we are happy to support in that regard. Then I would like to come back, because even if you offer takeaway right now, it won't help you surviving. So it's so you still depend on liquidity, you depend on financial support. And although we did something, of course, that's not enough, and financial support was needed from the government. But what we realized, so first of all, there was a lot. My office is in Düsseldorf. Germany was among those who were, I think, extremely active when it comes to SME support. So tax deferral, rent referral, and of course the short-term work allowance and the funds and things like that. But what we realized, and I guess many of my colleagues here will share that, many SMEs had no idea how to get now all the support from the government. So throughout the metro world, we try to do our best in linking what the government decided and how our customers can benefit from that by, for example, installing hotlines for restaurateurs, by providing all the information in local websites. We actually launched in a couple of countries Insta-chat, so that customers can just ask colleagues in Insta-chats what to do right now. And this has transferred, talking about the new normal in Spain, for example, but also in Germany, into something like an academy after the reopening of the HoReCa sector, how to deal right now with, for example, the safety regulations, thus being still business, somehow efficient. And then the last point I'd like to share, we also used our power and our brand in order to raise public awareness in a couple of countries for the difficult situation of the SME sector. And also, for example, we're working on solutions when it comes to the reopening, how to think about together. So we installed expert groups with medical experts, chefs, and quality assurance experts on how a reopening could look like. I think we invested a number of resources in that regard, because it was clear in the middle of the crisis what restaurateurs need is in perspective right now. And we were happy to be among those players who were creating together with others such an perspective. And then on this note, I'd like to conclude, because I think the time was also big opportunities for bigger players to really show their understanding of partnership And I guess many companies have also learned about themselves, at least for Metro, I would say that. But I think now it's really depending also on the policy level, what to do right now on a local level for our customers. A difference can be made already by granting outdoor spaces, for example, for restaurateurs. The national level, and now it's time for the EU to act and to show that they understand, that the EU understands the needs of small players, even the little bodega in Madrid, to understand that the little bodega even in Madrid understands the value of the European Union. That would be my wish, and I'm happy for further discussion. And last point, I fully agree with Mrs. Hohlmeier. Innovation needs to be also among, when we talk about recovery, we also need to talk about the future, even for the restaurateur sector.
Yes, thank you very much,
Thank
Yvonne. Very interesting. I think it's clear that we should look on any level what we can do and how can we do the best investment. And I'm also very happy that Henna Virkonen is with us. And Henna, welcome, because you are working in the ITRE committee. And ITRE committee is research, it's innovation, a lot of activities which take place in ITRE committee. And you are also the co-chair of the SME circle at the EPP group. So you are in the middle of the storm to help the SMEs. We would be very interested what are the main activities you are now taking into the future. Please.
Yes, thank you, Paul, and thank you, everybody. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this webinar. Really, as a co-chair of the EPP SME Circle, I'm always very interested in to hear also directly from the companies themselves, their experiences and also their recommendations, what should be done in the political level. Much like SME Europe, also our EPP SME Circle is a group of active members of European Parliament who greatly value the importance of small businesses and also entrepreneurship to our societies. And with the circle, we meet once per month in the European Parliament to discuss and influence the ongoing legislation from the SME perspective. And really the past months, we have been closely following, of course, the worrying impact of COVID-19 on SMEs. According to the data gathered by SME United, on average, 90% of the SMEs in Europe, they report that they have been economically affected by the COVID-19 crisis, 90% of the SMEs. So it has been very, very big crisis for them. And we know, like also the speaker just said, that the crises are not over yet, but at the moment, 30% of the SMEs, they report that their turnover is suffering at least 80% losses. EU-wide most impacted sector, they are really services, like we just heard examples, and also construction, production, and the food sector. Those are the most affected sectors. Considering these extreme numbers, it's very clear that direct liquidity measures are needed. And we know that loan guarantees and subsidies, they are available at some form in all member states now. And also postponement of taxes or social contribution payments, as well as postponement of repayment of loans is available in most EU countries. So these are, I think, very, very important steps what we have been taking in the member states level. And of course, Commission has been also very active here. However, it's clear that the more long-term solutions, both at the national and EU level, they are needed. And I think that like Paul and Monica already underlined, that we must ensure now that the new MFF and also the next generation EU, that they will provide the necessary funding for EU level initiatives. And I have to say that in the industry committee, as well as in our SME circle, we were very disappointed when we recognized that in the next generation EU recovery plan, the SMEs, they were not mentioned there. Of course, we know that there is instruments and there is possibilities for SMEs, but we would like to see that now when we are speaking about recovery, we should underline much more the role of SMEs there. And that is something that industry committee will work on now. we know that, for example, Invest EU, of course, and Horizon Europe, and also the Single Market Program, they should become available for the SME level as much as possible. And also the Just Transition Fund, it should offer resources for SMEs in their green transition. I think that in order to increase our SMEs resilience, now we know that we are very much underlining the resilience perspective in the European level, and then we have to really focus the SMEs resilience. For that, for future crises, they must be much better equipped with both digital and also climate transitions in the future. And now we know that lack of digital competencies and a limited uptake of digital technologies has been a major challenge for SMEs already long before the pandemic. And now, as we heard also from the presentation, due to COVID-19, companies in various different sectors, they have been really forced to take digital leaps forward now, and also in a very short period in time, and in same time in very uncertain circumstances. So for many SMEs, this has been a very difficult and costly transition, what they have been facing during the last months. I think also that now we should underline the role of reskilling and upskilling. It's required also from the perspective of greening of economy. The pandemic has not taken away the big challenges Europe is facing, but rather accelerated them. And also SMEs need to transform into sustainable businesses models in order to stay competitive. So I fully agree what also Paul was underlining in his opening remarks, that broad industry-led private sector initiatives should be definitely encouraged. And they would be especially helpful in answering the upskilling and reskilling challenge. And today it's also interesting day because Commission will today publish their skills agenda. So it's of course now very crucial for our SMEs also to see that how Commission is seeing the role of SMEs and what kind of instruments and tools we can give for SMEs, because they really need also support for upskilling now the people who are working there, and especially when we are speaking about digitalization and also the Green Deal and its targets. We know that SMEs, they need also European support for that. So this is now to where we will focus in Industry Committee very much to make sure that in MFF and in Recovery Plan, we have really instruments and possibilities for SMEs that we can support their digitalization and also transition towards climate neutrality. And of course, now we are also more and more underlining the role of resilience. And in all of these, we need more investments to innovations and educations and for skills. And these are all very important for our SMEs. So we really see that when we are speaking about the recovery, SMEs, they are the backbone of our economy, and we have to focus very much on them. So thank you very much for this invitation to this webinar, and it was very interesting to hear all the presentations.
Yes, thank you very much. We know that with Henna Virkkonen, we have a good fighter for the economic development of European Union, and especially the ITRE committee has a lot of responsibility, and we are so happy that you are with SME Circle, because that's, I think, a very important contribution to the political level, and therefore many thanks. We appreciate it very much. Then we come to our next speaker. It's Markus Schöberl. He is Director Selling Services of Amazon. So we are eager to hear what Amazon can do for their consumers and at least also for their suppliers. Please.
Yes, thank you, Paul, for the invitation. I would share just a brief presentation in support of what I'm saying. So, okay, good. Yeah, so I cannot really talk about streets or rails or 5G, but for sure, working for Amazon, I hope I can say a little bit more about digitalization and what we're doing in this space. And I think when we talk about Amazon, many of you will associate Amazon with being the retailer, but in fact, we're a group of different divisions, and all of them have in common that we extensively partner with SMEs. So to give you a few examples, when you look at the top left corner, one service we provide is our own logistical operation, so delivering to the doorstep of customers, where we actually partner with many small independent logistic companies in various countries. At the bottom left corner, when we talk about our Amazon Web Services business, so that's a unit where we provide IT infrastructure, so computing power, storage, analytics tools, tens of thousands of independent developers who are all SMEs in the end. They use these tools and these services to then deliver and enhance them with additional features to serve their own customers in the end. In our bottom right bucket here, when it comes to our books business, for example, so we started as a books online retailer, as I think all of you know. We've created an online self-publishing platform. So you could write a book, you're an author, you can self-publish. So again, all of these authors are typically SMEs. They are not large corporations. The area I'd like to focus on today, which is also the area I'm responsible for in Germany, is the so-called seller services business, or commonly referred to as marketplace. So yes, we started as a retailer, but very early on, actually in the year 2000, we opened up our website to invite independent third-party companies to also sell their products on the very same website. And as of now, more than 50% of the products sold on Amazon worldwide, they are being sold by these independent third parties, which is why I think, especially in this part, the marketplace business, we can very credibly talk about the fact that it's a very extensive partnership with tens of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses. And indeed, the last couple of weeks have been unprecedented. It has been very challenging for many SMEs. It has also been challenging for Amazon in many regards. But I think the important point is indeed to differentiate between two segments. One is the let's call them the classic traditional brick and mortar offline SME retailers, who were very evidently hit very hard compared to the ones who have at least one part of their business being online, or maybe are only selling online. So for the first part, the bricks and mortars, we've heard many statistics in the prior presentations already. I'm sharing also just a few. 70% of EU retail are SME, and only 17.5% of those are selling online. And if retail was probably the most affected sector in the last couple of weeks during the COVID-19 pandemic, it's very evident that especially those SMEs were hit hard. And one thing that typically gets underestimated is, and that's the fourth point, only a small portion, 8%, sell cross-border. And we all know, right? I mean, everybody was affected by the pandemic, but the lockdown periods were also different. It was different timings in different countries. Whether that in hindsight was the right thing or not, I mean, hard to say, probably not, but it was the case. So if you were, let's say, a German company and you actually had a presence in another country, maybe you could continue selling there during these times. If you were just selling in your own country and you were subject to the selling restrictions and the lockdown, obviously you couldn't. So very tough times. On the other hand, those companies that have mainly their presence online, either through their own web shop or through selling on Amazon or on eBay, on other marketplaces, they were not that much affected. They were affected in a different way. And I can speak about the companies that are selling on the Amazon marketplace in particular, obviously. The change or the challenge was there was a very dramatic shift in demand. So different products were suddenly demanded. And it's not just the stereotypical toilet paper, etc., but suddenly things you needed for homeschooling, printing paper, printing cartridges, etc. So working from home, all of these things were very, very important. I'm having a lot of background noise. Am I causing this, or is somebody else not on mute? Maybe just asking.
Sorry for this.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Apologies. So on Amazon as well, like there was not just a surge in demand very quickly, because obviously stores were closed and people were asked to stay at home to be safe. So they were what they were doing was ordering online most of the time, but also the type of products that were demanded were really different. So for a couple of weeks, people really didn't buy a lot of shoes or apparel or even cosmetics. But they did buy a lot of other things, PlayStations, TVs, and not just, as I said, toilet paper. So we reacted very quickly as well. So the number one priority for us was really to maintain our operations. And we, from day one, it was our fundamental belief that this is the best thing we can do, knowing that so many SMEs are using our websites to continue to sell and keep their operations up and running. And I'm saying it sounds that easy, but it was actually very challenging, because from day one, we were prioritizing the safety of our employees, in particular in our fulfillment centers, as the top priority. So we had also to cope with the surge in demand, the shift in demand, but also with putting the safety measures in place, which we did and really prioritized that a lot. And that created a bunch of challenges. Yes, we supported the SMEs also, in particular we waived certain fees, we gave them, in some countries, some financial help, working capital loans, etc. We relaxed some of the policies, but I think the more important point was really to keep the operations up and running, the ability to continue selling online, and maybe also to use our logistics infrastructure in order to fulfill the products to the end customers. I said already on the prior slide that normally already more than 50% of products sold actually stem from these independent third-party sellers on Amazon. During the the peak COVID time, so in week, let's say 13, 14, 15, 16, this year, this share actually further increased. So it was third-party businesses actually getting even more business during this period on Amazon. So how does this work? How are we supporting as a larger corporation? We're supporting because of the infrastructure we have put in place. I think if I were to summarize what we're trying to do, is we're really trying to facilitate the single market vision. Actually, our vision has always been to do that on a global scale. So we're still investing a lot in trying to make one vision happen. That is, let's say you're a company based out of Munich, you're an artisan producing jewelry. We want you to list once on Amazon, so list the products once, and then you are able to sell globally. So not just in Germany, but in France, also in Japan, in the US. That's very hard. It's very challenging to do so, but I think in terms of in the EU, we're actually quite advanced. So it's fairly easy. You can register your company on Amazon. You can start selling in the EU 5 countries where we have a website fairly easily. And the way we facilitate that is through not only the websites and the traffic, meaning the customers that are shopping on those websites, but also through physical infrastructure, meaning the hundreds of fulfillment centers we have in the various countries, or through some very practical help. So for example, we offer a lot of translation support. If you're a small company based out of Munich, you don't necessarily speak French or Spanish. So these are the types of things we're doing. And to give you one figure, more than 130,000 European sellers are doing that. And they're, in 2019, they've exported goods worth 6.9 billion. So really just exporting, meaning if you're based in Germany, we only count the revenue or the sales you do in France, Italy, or Spain. The mental model we have for that, and this is how we, I think, that's the principal philosophy, is it's kind of a pay-per-use or a success-based model, meaning we try to align the interest of those sellers with our customers and also with us. So in essence, if you sell, for example, a laptop, we would charge a commission fee, something like 7% of the sales you make. Yes, there might be additional costs for advertising, for using our logistics infrastructure. You don't have to do that, you can do that. But in essence, we're trying to align the interest, and that's why we believe the way we set it up, it's a win-win. It's both a win for the sellers and the customers, because customers appreciate getting this much larger assortment through those third-party sellers, which is way more than an independent retailer, even Amazon, can provide. the sellers themselves benefit from getting access to all those millions of customers. And in the end, for Amazon, it's also helpful, right? Because then it's becoming a virtuous circle. So one such company, I'm just sharing one example. It's actually a company based out of Munich, my hometown, Breiter Hütte. Very traditional store. They exist since 155 years, and for a couple of years, they not only have their 4 physical stores, but their 5th store, so to say, is being a seller on Amazon. We actually spoke to them recently during the crisis, and Andreas Breiter, the son who's running the company by now, also said that he appreciated very much that he had the opportunity to continue selling online when he had to close down his stores. So this is just one example. We have literally thousands that we could share. Now, what are we doing specifically related to SMEs and in which ways? I would summarize it as 2 things. One is lots of external, so partnerships with external institutions. And then secondly, also programs, or let's call them stores on our website for certain SME subgroups. So starting with the latter, we have a sub-store called Handmade that is specifically designed for artisans. We have a store called Amazon Launchpad that is focusing on SMEs that are innovative startups that typically also receive some funding from business angels, etc. But they typically sell innovative products. Or Amazon Storefronts, it's a sub-store where you can actually click on your federal state. So for example, Bavaria, and then you see which companies from Bavaria are selling on Amazon. So that's one part. The other part is really the external partnerships. So for example, in the UK, we just recently launched a partnership with the small business advisory network called Enterprise Nation. It's an initiative called Small Business Accelerator, where we feature many trainings, many webinars, many coaching sessions to help small businesses embrace the opportunities of digitalization and selling online. In Italy, for many years, we have a store called Made in Italy, where we help local producers to be featured and also to help them get trained in selling online. We're partnering with the OECD and the Digital for SME program. And also during the COVID time, in many countries, we've done specific webinars where we teamed up with, for example, the Competence Center from the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Germany, in order to also convey to those SMEs what help is available from the government, and not just what is Amazon doing as a private company. So to sum up, I think we're hearing also a lot from the SMEs that they appreciate sort of being able to use the Amazon infrastructure to sell globally in particular, which is something that in prior decades, I should probably say, this was really reserved to large corporations that had deep pockets. Now it's become very easy, but we also hear a lot of feedback in terms of what the political sector can do, and therefore we do embrace and really support the SME capacity building efforts. I think it's nothing new. Reducing administrative burdens is always something that is highly requested by SMEs, whether it's harmonizing the VAT schemes across the countries, whether it's really making sure that the producer responsibility scheme, it's working in a way that it's easy to understand and to facilitate and to deliver for those SMEs. That's one feedback we commonly hear. And we as a company, yeah, we're very supportive. We would like to continue to collaborate and contribute to these different initiatives in the agenda. And with that, I'd like to say thank you again and pass on to the next one.
Yes, thank you so much. Very interesting to see that this kind of platforms are a big help for SMEs to reduce bureaucratic burden, to be more efficient, to get more consumers outside of your own country. So it's very helpful. And thank you so much. So after Marcus, I come to Julian Cacciolio. He's Vice President Corporate Affairs at EMEA, India, and he's from Herbalife Nutrition. and we know nutrition is one of the key issues. And so we are very happy to hear from you. What are the trends in direct marketing?
Thank you, Paul, and good morning, everybody. And I just want to assure Marcus that my household has done its very best to keep Amazon going over these last few months, judging by the number of boxes we've had come through our door. So listen, I'll keep this very brief. It's an absolute pleasure to be alongside so many distinguished speakers and speakers who all share a common belief, I feel, that SMEs and the entrepreneurs behind them really are the lifeblood of any economy, and that we all need to do as much as we can to create the environment which allows them to thrive. Very briefly, for those who don't know Herbalife Nutrition, we sell meal replacement products, protein shakes, sports nutrition, targeted supplements across about 94 countries. We have a very strong European footprint. We have major manufacturing partners in Italy and Germany, and as you can imagine, that's been a challenge for us over the past month. We produce most of our European products locally, but we also export products to more than 50 countries outside of the EU. As Paul mentioned there, we don't use a traditional retail model. We use direct selling, and this is really a model that's been providing a flexible way for Europeans, regardless of gender, regardless of educational background, to set up their own business with very, very low startup costs, minimal inventory risk. So we really do encourage and create that, if you like, that breeding ground for entrepreneurs that become those small, medium enterprises that we're talking about today. Just to give you some context, the direct selling market in Europe is the third largest in the world, about 29 billion euros in retail sales. And more than 6 million people are engaged in this way of doing business. So that's really, if you think about it, that's millions and millions of micro and SME businesses across all of our member states. In our case, as a food company, our universe is full of SMEs. We have a very complex supply chain, including farmers, ingredient providers, food manufacturers I mentioned, logistics partners, event companies. But really what I'm really going to speak about today is our independent distributors. In my view, the very epitome of entrepreneurs, SMEs. These are the men and women who are out there every day selling our products to their customers. And I want to talk a little bit about how we partner with those distributor SMEs to help them build their businesses. And I'll talk a little bit about what we've done and what we've always done, and maybe just highlight some of the changes we've seen over the past months. But I want to call out a word I think a lot of people have said this morning already, and that's partner. Because we do see this as a partnership, whether it's within our supply chain or with our distributor SMEs. Partnership is key, and it's really going to be important that if SMEs are going to survive, there needs to be this partnership between big business, between the SMEs, and also with policy makers, so we all move towards that common goal. So let me talk very briefly about 4 areas: product, training, development, marketing, and advocacy. And starting with our products, our focus is on quality, innovation, and we believe we lead the way in this area. But for our entrepreneurial sort of SME distributors, to build their successful businesses, they really need to be at the cutting edge of nutrition science. You'll all be aware there are many, many products out there. So to have that difference, you need to be looking at the next product that's coming along, the next key area of innovation. And really, it's our job as a big business to kind of ensure that they are at that cutting edge. And we invest millions of dollars continually to develop our supply chain, to bring products to market faster, to find new ingredients, to work with them to create the products that their customers are demanding. For example, we've been pioneering kind of the use of plant-based diets for nearly 40 years. And you'll all know that's very much at the center of the Commission's Farm to Fork strategy. But one thing I want to highlight is that the research and development sector within the food and nutrition sector is absolutely vibrant with exciting young startups and SMEs They've all got incredible ideas that really could benefit many European consumers. But too often, we're seeing that real innovation in this area is thwarted. It's thwarted by regulation that simply isn't grounded in the latest science. There's a whole layer of SMEs that really cannot succeed within the current environment. And if policymakers could find ways to look to safely encourage this new thinking and increase speed to market, I believe they would unleash huge pent-up potential within this space. So moving on to my second point, which is training and development, and a number of people have mentioned today already about the importance of this to SMEs if they're going to be sustainable into the future. And this is true of our independent distributors. Many come to us with no formal nutritional business building training. And that's true of a lot of SMEs. They have great ideas, but they can't translate that into how do you make that a commercial business. So important part of what we do is we provide them with that training, with that knowledge. We have teams of nutrition experts, for example, who provide detailed nutrition training and also a product training. But we also provide information and tools that help those distributors who want to grow their business, whether it's to build an organization, whether it's to develop customer relationships, whether it's to manage their finances, operating in a regulatory environment. These are all tools and information that we provide to our SME partners to help them develop and grow their businesses. We believe this training and development element is absolutely vital for our distributors, and I would say really for all SMEs in every sector. I know the European Commission recognises this, and as just mentioned, they released their skills agenda, I think today, aimed at upskilling SMEs and driving innovation and training these future entrepreneurs to build these SMEs of the future. But we believe that investment in skills should be increased, and lifelong learning really should become a reality. And we certainly welcome the fact that the Commission is taking these steps, and and that they're allowing industry, big business, to participate in that process, and we certainly will do that. My third point was around marketing, and one of the things that we feel we do well for our SME partners, both within our supply side, but also on the sales side, is provide that marketing support, which many of them just simply don't have the resource or the experience and knowledge to do. Many of them obviously have their own localized marketing, but we believe providing them the support in this area is really important for them to stand out from what is increasingly a very, very busy marketplace. Content is certainly an area which we're seeing has evolved hugely and very, very quickly over the past few years. I mean, if you think 3 or 4 years ago, static content really was all we talked about, but social media has come along, and now really video content is all that people want to see. And I've certainly learned more about TikTok and Instagram than I ever thought I would need to know, but it just demonstrates that as big businesses working with SMEs, we really have to evolve much, much more quickly than probably we have done in the past. And we have to keep up with these guys because they're moving very much more quickly, and they're moving the way that consumers want them to move. And there's no point us trying to keep them back with our world. We have to move with them. We certainly invest heavily in supporting our brand, and that in turn helps our customers and our distributors. We work with, for example, the EU Week of Sport. We work with universities providing education support for students. We sponsor a number of teams, sports events, Atletico Madrid women's team, Lyonnais women's football team. We work with Olympic committees in Italy and in Greece. All of this really is to provide confidence and to provide really powerful reference points for our SME distributors. So when they're talking to customers and when they're talking to prospects, they are able to really support that pitch to them. Marcus, I think, mentioned Amazon there, and there's a huge demand, more now maybe than ever, to have that online retailing experience. Amazon, let's be honest, has set the bar and really is used as that reference point for many people as to what an online retail experience should be like. And that means that other companies like us and others, we heard from other speakers today, we have to really get up to speed on this. And we spend a lot of time developing tools for these SME distributors so they can provide their customers with that online experience which they come to expect. And it's very important that those tools are developed quickly, but also based upon feedback that we're constantly getting from our SME partners and from their customers. So this is really the kind of high level work that we do with our SME distributors. Of course, the last few months have seen some changes, but I wouldn't say huge changes for us as in our space. Yes, we've had to overcome huge logistic challenges. I mentioned our manufacturing partners in Italy. They are based in Bergamo, so right in that red zone that really was the start of the European move into this the current crisis. But really throughout that time, one of the most important things we did for all of our SME partners was made sure, working with our manufacturing colleagues, to ensure that there was no disruption of supply during that time. And I'm really proud to say that was the case throughout the entire issues that we faced. There was no disruption in supply of our products to our distributor SMEs and to their customers. Yes, we've had to change some of our logistics, and again, working with our SME logistics partners, we've shifted, a lot of what was previously personal pick-up orders through to direct ship to consumer, and we've done that almost overnight to ensure that supply and that products keep moving through. We've provided additional training. This has been we work in a regulated environment. This pandemic has heightened that, and we've had to help our SMEs and our partners understand the additional sensitivities around some of the claims they make on products and some of the claims they make on the opportunity they offer. And we've also, obviously, as we've all talked about, helped our customers and our distributors move online. And that's been almost, a complete mind shift for some of them in terms of how they manage their customers and their organizations, how they've adopted new tools. We're on Zoom here. Many people would never even have heard of Zoom before February, March of this year. So there's been a huge amount of time to do this. So at the top, I mentioned advocacy as a fourth area. And one of the things that Paul mentioned at the top is that there are 25 million SMEs in Europe, and depending on which sources you look at, they've created up to 85% of new jobs in the last 5 years, and they provide a huge part of the total private sector employment in the EU. And they need a voice. Platforms such as SME Connect provide them that voice. But Europeans are increasingly demanding self-employed or other types of flexible business opportunities. These diverse forms of work really are kind of becoming more and more important as we go forward, and they're going to become much more of an alternative to the traditional forms of work. Now, I know various action programs have been adopted, the Small Business Act, Horizons 2020, and Ms. Holmeyer also outlined a number of financial packages and instruments which have been implemented, but we need more. So I'm just going to finish. To unleash Europe's entrepreneurial potential, I think we need EU policies that remove barriers, such as the challenging access to finance, to social protection, to digital innovation. If we're going to create a more supportive environment for European entrepreneurs who are looking to pursue their own business opportunities, and this is true now more than ever. So thank you for this time, and I know that Herbalife Nutrition and all the companies we're hearing from today will play our part in that future.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting, and Julian, you can be sure you get our support, because I think the internal market is the base of a success story, and we all know that it's difficult in crisis time to get rid of national borders, but at least for business it's very substantial. And I'm very happy that Johannes Pitschke is with us from Siemens. He's Director EU Government Affairs, and we know that Siemens is a very successful company, and we are proud to have you, because Siemens have also a lot of suppliers and consumers. And we are now eager to hear from you what is the main questions for the future concerning Siemens business. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rubik. And thank you for inviting us here. It's indeed a very important topic. These are very challenging times. And as you pointed out, we work a lot with SMEs. Most of our customers are SMEs. Most of our, we work with thousands of suppliers. And we've seen in this COVID-19 crisis that industrial production also has to be maintained, and some sectors are particularly important. I mean, we've heard some great examples from the different companies now. And for me, I think it's really important also to point out that we're talking much more about ecosystems. It's not bigger companies versus small companies, but it is really an ecosystem where we work together. Many of our services and products that we eventually sell, it's many. Sometimes we just provide one part of it, and then there's others, especially SMEs, working together. So it's really a lot of collaboration and co-creation here, and that's why this is not a zero-sum game, but we have to work together to create this kind of win-win situation. And this has become even more important now when so many changes are happening. As the other said, we're now on Zoom, we have webinars. The uptake of digitalization has been extremely fast. So yeah, and in that sense also, I think it's important, this crisis has also brought out some really positive and good things. I mean, for us as a bigger company with quite a strong cash flow position, that then also allowed us to be much more flexible and be more generous when it comes to our the SMEs and our partners. We'd like to think of it as long-term partnerships, to be more flexible there and to allow for this to be maintained and sustained, and then say payments can be maybe done at a later stage and so on. So that's very important. I'd like to briefly mention 3 examples of concretely what we've been doing and in this crisis with a focus on SMEs, which are in the fields of medical equipment, in the fields of the food and beverage industry, and then lastly on cybersecurity. And then I'd also like to mention a few, just a very short selection of recommendations to policymakers. We have shared a set of recommendations with the European Commission, and we'll also be happy to share this with members of the European Parliament. I know Ms. Virkkunen also already expressed an interest, so we'll be very happy to do that. So coming to my first example is one technology that's coming up and very important for Siemens is what we call additive manufacturing. So you may know it as 3D printing. And this is something where Siemens has created over the past years a global platform that brings together suppliers and customers in the field of 3D printing to have a hub, a platform to share this expertise and bring together the parts. Now, what we've done in the COVID-19 crisis back in March is that we have our digital industries business has decided immediately to open up for free this platform to hospitals and to health organizations, because there was this massive shortage of medical supplies. And therefore, we really felt it's important to speed that up and provide this kind of platform to address this shortage. So that's something very concretely that we did in the healthcare sector. Second sector that which also became extremely a critical sector in this time is the food and beverage sector. And one example here, and we work with many companies in the food and beverage sector, but I pick a case study here from Austrian food producer Spitz. So in practice, what does it mean when we digitalize the factories and plants of our clients? We have here a producer that a company that produces over 1 million products in small batches, and it's on 30 different process lines. So that can have a variety from mineral water to bread, sandwich bread. And just by pressing one button, operators can switch one product to another on any given product line. Then as a consequence, the raw materials and the packaging for selected products are also called up fully automatically. So that then interlinks to the order data that is directly linked to the ongoing process, and production and consumption data is sent to the plant's data level. So what does it mean? It basically allows a much bigger degree of flexibility that would have never been possible without having a fully digitalized and automated plant. So we will probably see that, because what we need to see in the future, especially if there's a second wave, production lines need to be much more flexible and resilient. So thanks to digitalization, you can produce, have a mass production at a cost efficiency, even of quite small batches, and that's very important. That wasn't possible before. You have this much more individualized production side. So that's very helpful there. My last example comes in the field of cybersecurity. As Siemens, we've been the initiator and one of the founding members of the Charter of Trust. We launched this in 2018 at the Munich Security Conference. We have now more than 15 partners. Most of these partners are big multinational companies, but there are also some public authorities that have joined up. And we launched 10 principles on cybersecurity, and one of them is cybersecurity education. And especially now, in the COVID-19 crisis, with so many more people working remotely, with businesses working remotely, there's new challenges that come on. We have seen this even on a platform like this, on Zoom. There have been some incidents, and what we've done this year at the Munich Security Conference, for the second anniversary of the Charter of Trust, we launched a booklet on cybersecurity education, particularly aimed at small and medium-sized companies, to explain them what they can do in order to increase cybersecurity, and also how they could use cybersecurity as an opportunity, as a business enabler. Because if you have the right cybersecurity measures in place, your business model is much more resilient, much stronger. There's also that it lowers your risk, because we have data that says that over the past 2 years in Germany alone, the losses of companies due to cyber incidents have been higher than 43 billion euros. So it's a massive amount of money that can be saved. And obviously there are certain investments in hardware and software that you have to make, but the most important and critical factor, and that you can do with education, which is a brochure we put on the website of Charter of Trust for free, is the human link. It's the employees are the most important factor when it comes to detecting cyber attacks and cyber threats. So yeah, those are basically the examples I would like to share, that things that we are doing, and there's obviously much more that can be done. And just very briefly on policy recommendations that we have made, because I mean, it's great. I think in this crisis has shown also quite a determined action by policymakers, both at national level, but also at EU level, and that's great. And I think we need more of it. It's very important not to lose the focus on this green transition and on the digital transition that we need to make. Also today, start of the German presidency. So I think it's great to see that all these priorities are still very prominently in their program. So maybe if we just focus on 3 things. The first one is artificial intelligence, and there it's extremely important that we that we boost investments in artificial intelligence, especially in the manufacturing, in the health sector, mobility, energy. A lot can be achieved there, especially in the B2B field in Europe. The second one is 5G. So we really need to speed up the rollout of 5G. We need to have a stronger digital, more resilient digital infrastructure to rely on. And in that field, if you think of industry, then also please keep in mind to create the opportunity to operate our own so-called campus networks for industry, to have flexible, locally limited, sort of own 5G networks for communication inside one plant for the machine park. That's extremely helpful for the industrial players. And one third example, which is also something we've shared with the European Commission, is at Siemens we do a lot on digitalization. We have we do a lot on digital twin technology. So we create kind of a digital copy of a product. We can also have a digital twin of an entire production process of a plant. And what we felt is what we need to work on together with policymakers, also being ready and more resilient for the next crisis, is to come up to have sort of a library of digital manufacturing files. So basically a library of what are critical products in such a crisis, and to create this register of products to be then able to very quickly address them and ramp up production much faster if something like this happens again. So similar to what I mentioned before with the medical equipment, to be able to ramp up production fast and more flexibly. So yeah, thank you very much for your attention and for the opportunity to contribute here today.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much. In the meantime, I had some problem with my network, but it's always good to have double safety. And Johannes Nitschke, we know that your company is providing a lot of good opportunities. And I think it's good that we communicate these options which are there. And so we would be happy if maybe we could have some detailed information how we can help our members to link with your company. Then I come to Svenja Hahn. She from the IMCO committee. We are very happy to have you in our debate, and we would like to hear a comment from your side how internal market could help us to get SMEs on road again. Please, Svenja.
Thank you very much, Paul. Yes, thank you so much already for your presentation and interventions. I think we already heard quite some examples on success stories, on excellent ideas, on things to do. And for me as a politician, it's always helpful to get inspiration from real life experiences from companies. So I personally very much welcome those private initiatives to support our small and medium-sized enterprises. And we have to understand that in our market economy, we are very often stronger together. The market is not about fighting each other, or some might blame our system for that. Instead, big companies and SMEs, startups or self-employed persons need each other and support each other in practice. And I think Marco said it pretty well. What is a huge online marketplace without the small and medium companies selling or buying the goods on the platform? So I'm convinced that we as lawmakers in the European Parliament need to encourage private cooperation initiatives on this as well. And especially SMEs, we heard that already a lot, are an important cornerstone when it comes to overcoming the COVID-19 crisis. So supporting small, medium-sized enterprises, supporting startups, supporting self-employed persons is actually one of the main priorities for me as a member of the Single Market Committee. And as a person coming from myself from an SME environment, it's a personal concern for me as well. So therefore, I know very well that our economy needs much more than just aid programs and cash to flourish. We also need the right political framework in place, reducing bureaucratic burdens for businesses, fostering innovation, And even more important, we need to remove the barriers that are still existing to have a true single market. So the legal fragmentation of the European market is actually one of the biggest challenges that we currently face. So it's a crucial aspect as well when it comes to solving this crisis. So I'm convinced that we as politicians and actors in the private sector have to make the best out of this crisis in order to overcome it and to reset the European economy, because just getting back to normal won't be enough. We should aim at making our economy stronger and more resilient than ever before. And to reach this goal, investments have to be smart and have to be sustainable. And I think we learned a lot in the past weeks and months. For example, in my home country of Germany, we, well, not we, my party advocated for this since years, but the whole of the country realized how far we actually are behind on digitization. My party, the Liberal Democrats, pointed this out for years, and for many video conferences like these were just not possible because they were living in rural areas and they just did not have the digital infrastructure. And this is something we have to change quickly within the structures of our states, of our authorities, but also within our economies. Many companies were overwhelmed by the lockdown, not maybe because their business models were targeted by this lockdown. For example, like we heard before, like restaurant business, hospitality businesses, but just many office businesses just did not have the infrastructure to work from home. So we all had pretty much of a wake-up call, and we all have much to learn from this, and we all have much homework to do to make our businesses, our economies fit for the digital age. And that especially includes creating the digital market everyone is talking about. And in my role as rapporteur and shadow rapporteur on several files on artificial intelligence in the Single Market Committee, we have this goal as well. We want to legislate on new technology in a way that avoids red tape and high costs for businesses, but also gives a framework that fosters innovation with a technologically open legislation. And for that, we have as well to push our member states to take a big step forward to proper e-government structures that work for people, that work for businesses, and reduce bureaucracy as well. So there's a huge, huge, huge potential by resetting our single market as we know it, and by taking the next step in the single market by becoming a real digital single market. And I want to make sure that we stay on this path, that will make our economy stronger than before the crisis. And I'll happily welcome private initiatives on this, because I believe politicians, civil society, businesses, we all need to work together to achieve this very next big step. So thank you very much for all your ideas, and I'm not sure if we have much time for discussion left, but if we have, I'm happy to hear that.
It seems like Mr. Rübig is out again. I think he has some issues with his network. But yeah, anyway, Ms. Hahn, very thank you for your intervention. Really thoughtful, especially that part about artificial intelligence and how we need to digitalize. And here the next one would be Mr. Kovarek. He is board member of SME Connect and part of member of the Committee on Economic and Currency Affairs. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Henrik, and good morning. I hope you can all hear me well. Good. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity actually to take part in this webinar. I'm really glad actually, you know, to hear to all the different examples of how, let's say, large scale global companies are linking with their SMEs partners, be it in their value chain or be it in their customer base. I think it's very important actually. I've been to a number of several events you know, discussing the challenges for SMEs, and very often we heard you know, this binary: should we help large or small? You know, should we should we focus on some sectors? Should we focus on some type of companies? And I think in the end, what this webinar shows quite well, it's not actually, you know, there's no space for, there's no room for such binary thinking. It's actually, we have to help the business ecosystems and the business environment in its complexity. And I'm really glad actually to hear about the examples that the previous speakers were actually describing of how the large or the global companies can actually share part of their know-how, but also infrastructure, the way their business models, etc., with the SMEs community. And I think this is something that is crucial, and we should be able to build on this expertise, but also to build on these partnerships in order to, you know, help them develop maybe in some other sectors, because as it was said already, there is maybe a number of sectors that were hit, let's say, the worst, and we heard the numbers from colleagues, MEPs speaking earlier, how difficult in some sectors it will be actually to, you know, to recover, and how hard some of the companies were hit. But let me also maybe put it the other way. I think, well, indeed, it is a difficult time, but let me say it maybe as an opportunity, because I think what happens and what is actually currently happening with the crisis, it has actually served, or it has acted as a sort of a catalyst of some of the issues that were maybe you know, advancing slowly or gradually. I think the COVID crisis and especially some of the lockdown measures and the crisis linked to them were actually speeding some of the trends and some of the developments in the business environment. I think everybody mentioned the impact on faster digitalization. That is clear, but I would also say, and maybe just let me give you a perspective from the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee, where we were actually where we are dealing, and this is another area where I think the partnership between large and the SMEs community can be built and more developed. It's about the access to finance. Because we have an issue in Europe for a long time. We can see it especially in startup and scale up community, but we can also see it globally. The access to finance is actually an issue for a number of stakeholders, for a number of economic players. And I think, again, I can see the COVID crisis being a catalyst and maybe, you know, helping in actually creating new environment when it comes to accessing to finance for SMEs. We actually created in the Econ Committee this year a special working group that is actually just focusing on access to finance for SMEs. And I think that it's actually, and we created right before the crisis, without really, you know, knowing that something like this would happen. But I think when we had discussions with colleagues and other stakeholders during and after the crisis, it seems that, you know, maybe some of the projects that we were discussing in the European Union before can actually be again revitalized, if you want to, or revived and sort of accelerated again. And we can speak, for example, here about the Capital Markets Union that has been discussed for years in the European Union, and still has a lot of actually room for improvement, if you wish. But also, and I think it was mentioned here, it's about, you know, creating a real single market environment. Also, when it comes to, for example, access to finance, to actually show to the businesses, and I think the large and global players can have a role to play here, you know, in showing to small and medium-sized enterprises how actually to access finance in let's say foreign environment. What the companies are doing right now, the most, they are actually searching for bank lending in the country they know the best, or in the country which is their primary market. We see a number of administrative and other burdens or obstacles that are actually preventing them from reaching out to other markets. And I think this is something that we should actually also focus on. And it was mentioned by the previous speakers. I think Julia mentioned it, but also Ivone. You know, how the large companies actually are sharing their know-how, because they have capacities and resources in you know, basically searching and screening the landscape of financial institutions and looking and reaching out for different type of financing, be it market financing, bank lending, and other types of financing, like innovative financing, for example, through crowdfunding, etc. So I think this is something, and the small and medium-sized enterprises very often don't have capacity. They don't even have, you know, a very basic awareness or knowledge of those possibilities. So I think this is something where the partnership can benefit to both, and I will definitely be in favor and advocate, you know, in favor of building such a partnership on this particular level. So that I think is one of the critical issues that maybe we will not face right now, because obviously there's a lot of liquidity in the market. But I think with the crisis unfolding and developing, and also sort of you know, with different types of impacts that we will see in a medium and long term run on different sectors and on different companies. I think this is one of the sector we should also focus. And let me just finish with the very simple call to SMEs, but also to other stakeholders. Actually, I think one of the areas where maybe the crisis would work as a catalyst as well, it's actually building partnership between the private and the public sphere. And I think you know, platforms like SME Connect, but also others, actually, you know, should you know, help us to policymakers and to companies actually to sit together and discuss, you know, the real measures that we need to take, because we don't have time to lose. We should really focus on the measures that you know, will benefit most to the business environment. And I think it would be impossible actually without the proper debate and without the proper exchanges and proper communication channels between the business environment, the business community, and us policymakers, actually, in order to really, you know, target those areas that need let's say public action the most. So thank you once again for having us here. Thank you. You know, for sharing those practices, and I'll be happy actually to discuss it in the future as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. As you see, we always have to try to get everything done in the internet, and sometimes connections are good, sometimes not so good. But for SMEs, it's clear that we have to look forward. And I want to thank you all, because working for SMEs and a good economic situation is quite essential. I know that we also had some requests from Spain, from Javier Mira on investment. And I think he's totally right. Return on investment is now the real big issue, especially from private-public partnerships. And therefore, I'm very happy that we did this meeting, and I think we are just over time. So many thanks to you. Hope to see you soon, and I'm happy and proud to see you at the next meeting. All the best and goodbye.